7 years ago, my spouse vanished without a trace and was later declared dead after extensive searches. I finally found some peace and got engaged last month. Then, yesterday, she unexpectedly appeared at my doorstep with a child she claims is mine, but the timeline doesn't quite match. Now, she's threatening to take everything if I don't end my engagement and welcome her back as if nothing ever happened. I, a 35-year-old man, never imagined I would be in such a situation. My life has been an emotional roller coaster over the past 7 years, but I thought I had finally found stability and happiness again. Now it feels like I'm trapped in a bizarre nightmare that I can't escape. My wife Vanessa, who is now 34, disappeared without a word. At that point, we had been married for 3 years, having been college sweethearts who tied the knot shortly after graduation. Our marriage wasn't perfect, whose is, but it was good. We had our disagreements like any couple, but nothing that hinted at the complete devastation that was about to unfold. The day Vanessa went missing was just an ordinary Tuesday in March. She left for work in the morning, gave me a kiss goodbye at the door, and that was the last time I saw her. When she didn't return that evening, I called her workplace only to find out she hadn't shown up. Her car was missing, her phone was turned off, and none of her friends or family had heard from her. I immediately filed a missing persons report. Initially, the police suspected me, as they often do with spouses, but they quickly cleared me since I was teaching a class at the community college when she would have gone missing, with many students as witnesses. The investigation expanded, and for months, I lived in a state of desperate hope mixed with overwhelming fear. Search parties scoured the woods near our home. Her face appeared on flyers, local news segments, and missing persons websites. Hershey, parents and I hired a private investigator who followed every possible lead. 2 weeks after her disappearance, her car was located abandoned at a train station 3 hours away. Security footage captured someone resembling her parking the car and walking toward the platforms, but the image was too unclear for positive identification, and then the trail went cold. The most puzzling part was that there seemed to be no reason for her to vanish. Our bank account showed no unusual activity, her passport was still at home, and she left behind her laptop and all personal documents. We had been discussing starting a family, and just the weekend before, we were looking at houses in a neighborhood with better schools. Nothing made sense. After 2 years of dead ends, the investigation stalled completely. After 5 years, she was legally declared dead, even though her body was never found. This declaration was necessary for practical reasons, insurance and her estate, allowing me to move forward legally. But emotionally, it felt like losing her all over again. Accepting that declaration felt like a betrayal, like I was giving up on her. However, the lawyers and therapists I consulted convinced me it was a necessary step in the healing process. The grief consumed me. For months after she vanished, I couldn't sleep in our bed. I kept her toiletries in the bathroom and her clothes in the closet, as if she might walk through the door at any moment. Her parents and I initially supported each other, united in our loss and confusion, but eventually, our relationship became strained. They moved across the country to be closer to their other daughter, and our contact became infrequent. My friends were supportive but didn't know how to help. There was no body to bury, no closure, just a painful wound of uncertainty that wouldn't heal. I attended a support group for families of missing persons, which helped somewhat, at least there. No one told me to move on or asked if I'd heard anything for the 1,000th time. For the first 3 years, I lived in a kind of limbo. I couldn't bring myself to date, yet I had to accept that my wife was likely never coming back. I threw myself into work, took on extra classes, volunteered, anything to fill the endless hours that stretched before me. I sold our house, too many memories, and moved to a small apartment closer to campus. Around the 4-year mark, something shifted. I still missed Vanessa and wondered what had happened, but the grief transformed into something I could carry without being overwhelmed by it. I started reconnecting with friends, saying yes to social invitations that I would have previously declined. I began to feel glimpses of happiness again, brief moments that didn't immediately trigger guilt. 2 years ago, I met Morgan, who is now 33. She was a new faculty member in the English department, and we connected during a curriculum planning meeting. Morgan was smart, kind, and patient with my complicated emotional baggage. We began as friends, but it gradually evolved into something deeper. She never pressured me to move faster than I was comfortable with, never compared herself to Vanessa, and never made me feel like I had to choose between my past and my future. Meeting. Morgan felt like waking up after a long, dark night. I hadn't realized how much of myself I had locked away until she helped me rediscover joy, laughter, and hope. 6 months ago, I asked her to move in with me. And last month, I proposed. She said yes. For the first time in 7 years, I felt like I was truly living again, not just existing. Then yesterday happened. I was at home alone, grading papers while Morgan was at a conference in Chicago. Around 2 p.m., the doorbell rang. When I opened it, it felt like I was staring at a ghost. There was Vanessa standing on my doorstep, looking older but unmistakably herself. Her hair was shorter, and she was thinner than I remembered. But it was her. Beside her was a young girl, maybe 6 years old, clutching Vanessa's hand and staring up at me curiously. I couldn't speak. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen in shock. But eventually, Vanessa broke the silence by asking if she could come in. I stepped aside, watching as my supposedly dead wife walked into my apartment with a child I had never seen before. Once inside, Vanessa looked around, taking in the unfamiliar surroundings with an unreadable expression. The little girl, Emma, as I would soon learn, asked if she could use the bathroom. After pointing her in the right direction, I was left alone with Vanessa for the first time in 7 years. She sat on my couch as if she had every right to be there, as if she hadn't vanished without a trace, and left me to pick up the pieces of my shattered life. When I finally found my voice, all I could ask was why. My hands were shaking so badly that I had to sit down. The story she told me was so outrageous that I still don't know what parts, if any, to believe. According to Vanessa, she had been unhappy in our marriage, but didn't know how to tell me. She claimed to have felt suffocated, trapped in a life she wasn't sure she wanted. Instead of having an adult conversation, she meticulously planned her disappearance, creating a new identity and starting over in Canada. She said she never intended to stay away forever. She thought she'd take a year, maybe 2, to find herself, before deciding whether to return. But then she discovered she was pregnant, and everything changed. She claimed Emma was my daughter, conceived shortly before she left. This is where her story completely falls apart. If Emma is really 6 years old, as Vanessa claims, then the timeline doesn't add up. She would have had to be at least 2 to 3 months pregnant when she left, but we had negative pregnancy tests during that time since we were actively trying to conceive. I pointed this out, and Vanessa's explanation became vague and contradictory. She mumbled something about the tests being wrong, about not realizing she was pregnant until later. But she wouldn't meet my gaze. When Emma returned from the bathroom, the resemblance to Vanessa was striking. The same heart-shaped face, the same dimple in her left cheek. But I searched her features for any sign of myself, and found none. Vanessa noticed my scrutiny and quickly sent Emma to play a game on her phone in the kitchen, just out of earshot. Then came the real bombshell. Vanessa said she had returned because she wanted us to be a family again. She had been monitoring me from afar, though she wouldn't say how, and knew about Morgan. She expected me to end my engagement immediately and welcome her back as my wife. After all, legally, we were still married since the death declaration could be reversed. When I refused, her demeanor changed completely. The softness disappeared from her voice, and the Vanessa I thought I knew vanished before my eyes. She threatened to make my life hell if I didn't comply, saying she would tell everyone I had abandoned her when she was pregnant, that I had known where she was all along, and that the whole missing person case had been a cover for my own wrongdoings. She threatened to fight for full custody of Emma and take half of everything I owned. I was reeling. This woman, this stranger wearing my wife's face, was threatening to destroy the life I had painstakingly rebuilt if I didn't submit to her demands. I asked her to leave, telling her we could discuss this with lawyers present, but she refused to go without my promise to break things off with Morgan. Eventually, I had to threaten to call the police before she would leave. As she headed for the door with Emma in tow, she turned back with a cold smile and said I had 48 hours to make my decision before she went public with her return. The last thing she said was, I was legally declared dead. Imagine how it would look if people found out you moved on so quickly after your poor missing wife returned alive and well with your child. The door closed behind them, and I collapsed onto the floor, my mind spinning. I sat there for hours, unable to process what had just happened. I didn't sleep at all last night. How could I? The wife I mourned for 7 years had returned from the dead, not as the woman I had loved, but as a manipulative stranger using a child who may or may not be mine as leverage. The life I had built with Morgan, the future we had planned, was suddenly at risk of being shattered. This morning, I called in sick to work and contacted a lawyer who specializes in family law. I have an emergency appointment this afternoon. I also reached out to the detective who had handled Vanessa's case years ago, though I haven't heard back yet. I haven't told Morgan. She's still at her conference and is scheduled to return tomorrow. How do I even begin to explain this situation? Hey, my dead wife is alive and threatening to ruin our lives unless I leave you. It sounds absurd, even in my head. But I know I need to tell her as soon as possible. She deserves to know what we're facing. The question of Emma weighs heavily on my mind. If there's even a possibility she's my daughter, I can't turn my back on her. She's an innocent child caught in her mother's web of deception, but the timeline discrepancy nags at me. If Vanessa was pregnant when she left, she was deliberately keeping it from me, which contradicts our active attempts to conceive. If Emma was born later, then she can't possibly be mine. I've spent the morning looking at old calendar entries and emails from that time, trying to piece together a definitive timeline. Vanessa and I had been trying for a baby for about 4 months before she disappeared. She had regular doctor appointments, and we were tracking her cycles. There was a negative pregnancy test just 2 weeks before she vanished. For Emma to be mine, that test would have had to be a false negative, and Emma would have to be turning 7 soon, not 6, as Vanessa claimed. The more I think about it, the more convinced I am that Emma isn't mine. But why would Vanessa lie about this? What could she possibly hope to gain? If she wanted money, she could have contacted me privately, instead of this dramatic confrontation. If she genuinely wanted reconciliation, threats and manipulation seem like a terrible approach. Nothing about this situation makes sense, just like nothing about her disappearance made sense 7 years ago. I feel like I'm trapped in some bizarre psychological experiment, waiting for someone to reveal the hidden cameras and explain the twisted rationale behind it all. I can't stop thinking about Emma. Regardless of her parentage, she's being used as a pawn in whatever game Vanessa is playing. She seemed like a sweet, well-adjusted child during our brief interaction. Does she believe I'm her father? What? Has Vanessa told her all these years? If Emma isn't mine, who is her father? And does he know about her? The questions multiply by the minute with no answers in sight. The 48-hour deadline Vanessa gave me expires tomorrow afternoon, right around when Morgan is due to return from her conference. The timing feels deliberate, as if Vanessa wants to maximize the chaos and pain she can inflict. I've considered calling Vanessa's parents, but hesitate to upend their lives with this news. They've already been through so much grief and uncertainty. What if this is some elaborate hoax? What if the woman who came to my door just looks remarkably like Vanessa, but isn't her at all? It seems implausible given how well she knew details of our life together. But at this point, I'm questioning everything. Then there's the legal side of this nightmare. If Vanessa is alive, the death declaration can be reversed, which means technically we're still married. Does that invalidate my engagement to Morgan? Would Vanessa really have a claim to half of everything, even though she's the one who abandoned our marriage? What about the life insurance payout her parents received? Would they have to return it? The practical implications are dizzying. But beyond the legal complications, there's the emotional devastation. I mourned Vanessa. I loved her, searched for her, grieved her, and eventually found a way to keep living without her. I built a new life, fell in love again, and started planning for a future I never thought I'd have. And now she expects me to discard all of that, to act as if the past 7 years never happened, to choose her over the woman who helped me heal. The cruelest part is that the Vanessa who returned isn't even the woman I loved. The person who sat in my living room yesterday was calculating and manipulative, willing to use a child as leverage. Either she was always this person and hid it well, or the years away have fundamentally changed her. Either way, I don't recognize her anymore. I keep coming back to Emma, If there's any chance she's my daughter, I want to be part of her life. I want to know her, protect her, and love her. But establishing paternity without Vanessa's cooperation could be difficult, and the prospect of a prolonged legal battle fills me with dread. What impact would that have on Emma? She's already been raised for 6 years believing whatever narrative Vanessa has constructed. The lawyer I'm seeing this afternoon can hopefully provide some clarity on my options. Can I demand a paternity test? Can I fight Vanessa's threats of false allegations? How do I protect Morgan from being collateral damage in this mess? I've started documenting everything I can remember about yesterday's encounter, writing down Vanessa's exact words and threats while they're still fresh in my mind. I've also dug out all the old case files, the missing person reports, and the death declaration paperwork. If this does become a legal battle, I want to be prepared. In my darkest moments last night, I wondered if it would be easier to just give Vanessa what she wants, to break Morgan's heart, to surrender to Vanessa's demands to avoid the public spectacle and legal nightmare that's sure to follow if I resist. The thought lasted only seconds before I dismissed it. I can't abandon Morgan. I can't let Vanessa destroy what we've built together. I can't reward manipulation and threats. But standing my ground means walking into a storm. It means telling Morgan that our future is suddenly uncertain, that the past I thought was resolved has violently reasserted itself into our lives. It means possibly fighting for paternity rights to a child I just met, or alternatively proving that Emma isn't mine, and dealing with the guilt of disrupting her understanding of who her father is. It means facing Vanessa's wrath and whatever false narrative she decides to spin. There's also the practical question of where Vanessa and Emma are staying now. She didn't leave any contact information, presumably to maintain the upper hand. Will she just show up again tomorrow when the deadline expires? Should I prepare Morgan for that possibility? Should I have someone else here as a witness? Every path forward seems fraught with pain and uncertainty. The foundation of my carefully reconstructed life has been shaken once again, and I'm struggling to find solid ground. If anyone has experienced anything remotely similar, or has any advice on how to navigate this impossible situation, I would be grateful. I feel completely out of my depth, like I'm drowning while trying to keep everyone else afloat. Update. 4 hours later, I just returned from meeting with a lawyer, and there's a new twist to this already bizarre situation. She advised me to immediately file a police report documenting Vanessa's return and her threats. While we were discussing the process, I received a call from the detective who handled Vanessa's disappearance 7 years ago. He had urgent news. The fingerprints from the woman claiming to be Vanessa had been in the system for years. She isn't Vanessa at all. She's Vanessa's college roommate, Lauren, who was interviewed during the original investigation. Lauren had apparently been obsessed with Vanessa, and by extension, me, for years, though she hid it well when questioned by the police. The detective believes Lauren may have been involved in Vanessa's disappearance, though they never had. Enough evidence to pursue her as a suspect. Now they're reopening the case with Lauren as the primary person of interest. They've already obtained a warrant and are looking for her, but she's not at the address she provided when she got a rental car upon arriving in town. I'm in complete shock. The woman who came to my door looked so much like Vanessa, or at least what Vanessa might look like after 7 years. She knew intimate details about our life together, things I thought only Vanessa would know. Had Lauren been stalking us even before Vanessa disappeared? Has she been monitoring me all these years, waiting for the right moment to insert herself into my life? And what about Emma? If Lauren isn't Vanessa, then Emma certainly isn't my child. But whose child is she? Is she Lauren's daughter? With someone else? Is she somehow related to Vanessa? Or, most disturbingly of all, did Lauren abduct a child to complete her twisted fantasy? The police have issued an Amber Alert for Emma, described as approximately 6 years old with brown hair and blue eyes. They're treating this as a potential kidnapping situation until they can determine Emma's identity and whether she's in danger. I've been asked not to return to my apartment tonight in case Lauren comes back. The police have set up surveillance, hoping she'll return looking for me. I'm staying at a hotel under an assumed name with a police officer stationed in the lobby. Morgan is cutting her conference short and flying back tonight. I finally told her everything over the phone, and her reaction was better than I could have hoped for. Shock, of course, but also unwavering support. She insisted on coming back immediately despite my concerns for her safety. The police have arranged for an officer to meet her at the airport and bring her to a secure location where we can reunite safely. The detective believes Lauren's endgame was to replace Vanessa in my life permanently. My engagement to Morgan likely triggered her decision to finally make her move after years of watching from the shadows. The 48-hour ultimatum was probably designed to prevent me from looking too closely at her story or consulting with authorities before she could cement her place in my life. I'm struggling to process all of this. The relief of knowing that Vanessa hadn't willingly abandoned me is overshadowed by the renewed grief of confirming she's likely dead after all, potentially at Lauren's hands. The fear for Emma's safety is consuming, and the violation of having been watched, studied, and targeted by someone constructing an elaborate deception around my deepest loss makes me feel physically ill. The question that haunts me most is what really happened to Vanessa. Did Lauren harm her? Was she responsible for Vanessa's disappearance all those years ago? And if so, why wait 7 years to approach me? The detective couldn't share all the details of the investigation, but he indicated they're searching properties connected to Lauren for evidence related to Vanessa's case. For now, all I can do is wait in this anonymous hotel room, hoping the police find Lauren and Emma quickly, hoping Morgan arrives safely, hoping for answers that might finally bring closure to the mystery that has defined my adult life. But even if we get those answers, I know our lives have been irrevocably changed by yesterday's knock on my door. I'll update when I can, but the detective has advised me to stay off social media and limit my digital footprint until Lauren is caught. Thank you to everyone who offered support and advice. In just 24 hours, this situation has evolved from a personal crisis into a criminal investigation.